Hey, Kate, what did you eat last night?
I made sag paneer.
What?
Yes, and I made my own paneer, which I might have talked about on here before, but
I think you have, but it's always welcome to the podcast, Kate.
Yeah, it's Artie Sequeira's recipe, who is a Food Network chef. And you make the paneer just by heating up milk, and then you put lemon juice in to curdle it, and then you strain it through cheesecloth and press it. And you and I had been talking about the lemon question, and you were like, is it possible to put too much lemon juice in? And I said, well, for me, for this recipe, no, because I rinse the paneer, and therefore the lemon flavor comes out. Well, yesterday, for the first time, I was being stingy with my cheesecloth, and as a result, I didn't rinse it quite as well as I normally would have, and so the paneer ended up having a slightly lemony taste to it.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Now, as it happened, that went well with the sag paneer because it just sort of tasted like lemongrass or the Thai lime leaves, the makrut lime leaves. By the way, little sidebar about that. Did you know, I learned recently that we typically have always called them kaffir lime leaves is what I've always bought them as. And it turns out that is a racial slur. And we're not supposed to... Yes! So we're not supposed to call them kaffir lime leaves anymore. It's makrut, M-A-K-R-U-T.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who knew?
I know. So I almost called you last night while I was making it because it involved caramelizing onions. And so naturally, I was there for like an hour and a half.
Yeah, well, I was going to say you probably didn't have time to call me because they just caramelize so quickly.
Exactly. This might take 15 minutes, she says in the recipe. To hell with that. Come on.
Can I jump back and ask were you being stingy with your cheesecloth?
Because I'm cheap. Frugal.
Okay. I thought maybe you had just like a little piece left or something.
No, I've been going through it lately. I've been making a lot of things that involve it, and it's not that it's expensive, and so I'm like, maybe I can get by with a little less, I thought. Okay. So I had a piece that was cut, and I thought, I'm just going to make this piece work instead of cutting off a whole new giant piece. Yeah. It turned out fine. I could have rinsed it better, but I will probably just use the proper cheesecloth next time. But it was totally delicious, spicy. It's so good. I really, really love the sag paneer recipe.
Nice. And if you guys haven't tried it, it's so simple. It's so worth it.
It is. It takes time, but it's not difficult.
Yeah.
That's basically my thoughts.
And the flavor is just so delightful.
And I've tried a number now of sag paneer recipes, and I've bought store-bought paneer and frozen and compared it, and the one that I make I like so much better, and this particular recipe I just like better than any other one I've encountered.
Nice.
It's so good. I love it.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what I had. How about you?
Well, it's odd you talked about paneer because I made homemade ricotta. On my way, I also made a homemade tomato sauce on my way to making a vegetable lasagna. So I'd never made ricotta before, so I always wanted to try it. And again, very similar to the paneer. Basically, it was milk and cream. Bring it, heat it up, put in the lemon juice so it curdles, strain it through cheesecloth, and you just let it be there until it hardens. And it was really, really tasty. I really invested in really good milk and really good cream from like a farm that was close by. So I think that really, I think I really benefited from the flavor profile of that. So that was delightful. And then I made a homemade tomato sauce based off of Giada's recipe, which is super simple. You know, onion, carrot, celery, tomatoes, garlic. And what I thought was interesting about her recipe is she had me put in, I think it was half a cup of olive oil in the pan, into which eventually everything gets added. And I was just surprised because I thought, that seems like a lot of olive oil at first, but it was really, really good because I think I've always not used a lot of olive oil when I made my homemade tomato sauce because I've always sort of winged it, but it was really, really good. And I let it simmer for a really long time this time, which I think made a difference, primarily because I forgot it was on the stove. And luckily it didn't like get dry out or anything, but it was really good. And then I put it in some lasagna pieces, and with the ricotta, the homemade tomato sauce, the bottom layer I did spinach, the next layer I did mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, and then on the top layer I actually did a meat substitute of a sausage that I like, which I did not like this time in the lasagna. I've liked it other times. I used it in stuffing, and I think it gets really moist in stuffing, but somehow I think it dried out a little bit in lasagna, so it was not as good. But at the end of the day, I just topped it all with a bunch of basil, and it was so tasty.
Sounds delicious. I want to go back to the ricotta for a second. At what point do you add salt?
You know, isn't that funny? Because I was going off a Jeffrey Zakarian recipe, 2 recipes, a Jeffrey Zakarian recipe on Instagram, and he said have salt, but then he used it just to, after he smeared ricotta on a piece of bread, he threw salt on the bread. And then I was working off another recipe from Ina Garten, which also called for salt, but nowhere in the recipe does it tell you what to do with the salt and when to put it in.
Because I was thinking about adding salt this time to my paneer. Because it could use it, and then, but I've always but then I thought, well, when? At what point? Probably after you wring it out, but before I form it into the paneer, I'm guessing.
I would think so. I put it right when I put the ricotta into the cheesecloth and just let it set. It's still warm and mushy, so I mixed it in there and just let it drain.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And really the big difference between the ricotta and paneer is the use of cream for ricotta, and then for the paneer, you form it into something more solid instead of keeping it loose.
Yes.
But otherwise, it's basically the same. And I've heard you can use vinegar instead of lemon juice, which would be less expensive, but I haven't tried that yet.
There are a couple recipes out there with vinegar. The ratios seem to be the same, but I don't know why. I just thought if there's a residue taste, which I wasn't sure of, I was like, I think I'm going to want the residue of the lemon more so than any vinegar.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because I was like, no, it never tastes like lemon. And then this first time I'm like, wow, it totally tastes like lemon.
Hello and welcome to another episode of You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night. I'm Rick.
And I'm Kate.
And this is our ongoing conversation about food, health, weight management, and our endeavor to be and stay healthy in a really tasty world.
With love, kindness, and compassion towards ourselves and others.
Season 5 of You Won't Believe What I Ate Last Night is brought to you by Smart Building Technologies, a leading provider of building automation solutions, bringing smart technologies along with energy savings to the workplace. Find out more at smartbuildingtech.com. That's smartbuildingtech.com. First off, a big thank you to those of you who have been rating and reviewing us.
Yes.
We really, really appreciate it. Keep it up. If you haven't done it, get to it.
Yes, thank you so much. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, just give us some stars and a little review, and it goes a long way to helping other people find us. Thank you so much.
And as always, follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And aren't you lucky? You know what we're talking about today? We're talking about
meat substitutes. We didn't know what to call it because in our heads we're calling it fake meat, but that doesn't seem like a good title. Totally. So we're calling it meat substitutes. That's what we're talking about today.
Thanks for saving the day there. I was like, I'm not calling it fake meats.
Like, what are we calling it exactly?
Did we settle on a title?
Yeah. Well, let's go with meat substitutes. That's what we're calling it. So, Rick, what has been your experience with meat substitutes? Do you like them? Do you have favorites?
I have had a lot of experience with it. And when I was thinking about this topic, I was really thinking how I really have gone off them in the last several years. When I first became a vegetarian or a pescatarian, I was really eating meat substitutes quite a bit and buying some things that were in the store and making them. And I never really liked it. And I think those were the early days, too, when these things were just starting to come out. And so I was thinking how I haven't really been doing it lately. Now, so at home, I don't particularly cook with it a lot, with the exception of maybe, I get this craving every 4th of July to have my like fake tofu dogs. So that's about it. And then I really do like it when I go out into a restaurant. I've identified a couple of restaurants that work with it really, really well, and it makes me really, really happy. So I'm still in the ballpark of when I'm out, all good. At home, not so much. How about you?
Similar in some ways. When I was first a vegetarian, when I was only a vegetarian, the only time I was a vegetarian for a couple of years ago. This was a long time ago now, 25 years or so. The only options were Garden Burgers and that brand basically, and TVP. textured vegetable protein, which we'll talk more about later, which I was grateful for.
Yeah.
But the amounts now is crazy. I was just in the store today, and there was shelf after shelf after shelf of this stuff. I was shocked to see how the market has really blossomed, which is thrilling. And the other thing that I tried is jackfruit.
Oh, right. Yeah, I've never done the jackfruit thing.
I actually bought a thing of jackfruit in barbecue sauce because they say that it mimics the texture of pulled pork, and so that's a really common way to have it. And so I bought one that was already prepared instead of trying to mess with doing it myself. And I had that for lunch today in preparation for this episode so that I could discuss it. I know. I did it on purpose. I was going to get something, and they were also expensive. They were like $10 for 4 sausages or whatever, or 4 beef patties or fake beef patties. And I was like, I don't want to do that kind of experiment for that. So I bought this little pouch of the thing. And it was okay. It's hard to say. I'm not sure how much I loved the flavor of the sauce it was in. It looked so much like pulled pork that it was like almost disconcerting how much it looked like it. Yeah. It was weird. The texture on your teeth was not identical, but sort of similar. And it was hard for me to ascertain the flavor of the fruit itself. It definitely had a fruit feel, but it's not uncommon to have like some pineapple in a barbecue, and that's kind of how it ended up feeling. It has a pineapple-y vibe to it. So yeah, it was all right. I'm not going to run out and buy it again, but if I didn't eat meat and was looking for something different, I would totally try it.
You just touched on something we've talked a lot on this episode about when something is called something that it's not like pulled pork. So I thought it'd be great if like, what would be the new name when you make jackfruit that way? Because this whole idea of, trying to make the actual fake meat tastes like real meat, it's such a silly thing, and I really can't stand it in the names either because it totally just throws me off. Psychologically, I do a lot better when it's just what it is, like a really flavorful dish, not particularly, fake this or fake that.
Agreed. And we've talked about that in terms of restaurants, that our favorite restaurants are ones that aren't pretending to make a meat dish but subbing it with something. They're actually just making an awesome creative vegetable dish.
Yeah. And that's, to me, one of the skill levels in a restaurant, because I think, to work with tofu or any of these meat substitutes, you need a lot of skill. You need a lot of flavor profiles because that's what they're so dependent on what you add to them. Otherwise, they all just taste sort of weird right out of the package for the most part. And so I think that's where I struggle a little bit at home, is I just haven't invested the time, really, to figure it out.
And as you just hit on, our topic today isn't vegetarian cuisine. It is specifically meat substitutes, and neither of us are super excited about the concept of meat substitutes. I think that's the other thing.
Yeah.
In a weird way, probably more me than you, because, have you even had the Impossible Burger from Burger King?
Not from Burger King, no. I've had the Impossible Burger other places, though, yeah.
So I made a point of getting it from Burger King because I wanted it to try it there, and it's possible I wouldn't have known that it wasn't meat because it tasted like Burger King tastes. It didn't taste like anything else. You know how there's a unique taste to Burger King food.
Oh, Kate, I know it well.
Yeah, so it tasted like that, and so it was pretty amazing.
Wow. That's so interesting because one of the things I was reading about is, so when you look at the promotion that Beyond Meat does, which is one of these fake meats that's out there, what I loved about them, the more I read about them, is they have this line where they say they actually aren't marketing to vegetarians. They have no interest in it. They're marketing to meat eaters because they want people eating less meat. And I'm like, that's such a great shift to make. Because the minute any of my friends that don't like particularly tofu, the minute they hear it's tofu, they're like, they're just turned off by it. And a lot of them really came to tofu in those early days when, tofu was terrible and people didn't really know what to do with it. And I still feel like a lot of them have the hangover of that terrible texture that tofu is.
Yeah, and the burgers don't bear any relation to tofu. And Beyond Burger doesn't even have soy in it. It doesn't have anything resembling tofu. It uses rice, peas, and mung beans and fava. The Impossible Burger is soy. So it does have soy. So they're different. And soy is also what we have in tofu and tempeh. And then we have others that are made of wheat gluten, like seitan.
Have you heard of natto?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I haven't tried it yet. And when I was in the research, I came across it. I'm like, oh, yeah, I just don't think I've encountered it anywhere. But they say it's a lot similar to tempeh. It's made from soy that's been fermenting. So it amps up the probiotic content. They say it's an excellent source of protein, cramming an impressive 31 grams into just 1 cup. But I've yet to see that on any menu. I mean, I see seitan, I see tempeh, I obviously see tofu, but I never see the natto.
So, Rick, do you have an opinion about which of the meat substitutes that are available to us are the best for us and healthiest?
Here's how I'm going to break it down. I do have an opinion from what I've read and also my own personal experience. So we're going to start with tempeh. So tempeh it's made by slightly fermenting soybeans and packing the mixture down into a firm, dense patty. It's made from whole soybeans, which means it tends to be, of these products, one of the least processed things. So that's really good. Mm-hmm. And the tempeh, it tends to be a little bit more flavorful from the others, right? And it has a dense, crunchy, chewy texture. So I always like that. All right, so after that, I'm going to go with tofu, because tofu is always a little tricky, because tofu is made from coagulated soy milk, right? So that's how they get these shapes made. And sometimes when you buy soy products, that the temperature that they have to heat this, get the soy milk to get it to coagulate and make shapes, I've read some things and a lot of things that it actually becomes it actually destabilizes everything. So that's why I think the more the tofu gets processed, particularly into different shapes, the least healthy it is. And then after that, I'm going to go with seitan. Now, seitan it's made from the protein of wheat and it's ground. And then here's what I don't like about it. Once you take the wheat and you grind it, the starch is washed away. And from everything I've read, they always say it's washed away with solvents. And I always want to know what solvents are. And I can never find out and could never find out what the solvents are that wash stuff away. And I'm like, it can't be good.
Solvents. It's a terrible word. It does sound like some kind of battery acid.
Yes, that is underneath your sink that you're going to get out.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of the research, when they were breaking it down for me, they were like, and you can make all of these at home. I'm like, really?
Wow.
Can you? No, I got interested for 2 seconds in trying it, but then I gave it up. And then here's what I have at the bottom of my list. Our classic textured vegetable protein. And it's so funny, when it first came out, as you both know, I think we both gravitated to it, and it was really tasty. But the few times I've worked with a nutritionist and any other people, sort of, particularly in the Ayurveda world that I've talked to, really just think textured vegetable protein is the worst thing ever. It says, and this is the description, it's a highly processed meat substitute developed in the 1960s by food conglomerate Archer Daniels Midland. So the minute I read that, I'm like, well, nothing good can come of that. And it's made by taking soy flour, which is a byproduct of soy oil production, and removing the fat. Again, wait for it, using solvents. The end result is a high-protein, low-fat product. And then the soy flour is extruded into various shapes, such as nuggets and chunks. So that's where I'm going to rate them.
Yeah, and that's because that one's the most processed and therefore the farthest away from the original soybean.
Yeah.
That makes total sense to me. I think for a lot of people, seitan's a problem because it's gluten, and there are a lot of people who avoid gluten. So that would be a bummer to have that be an issue. So I think if gluten's not an issue for you, then there's no problems with it. So I think so. I think I would put jackfruit up near the top if people are considering that a meat substitute for sure, because it's a fruit. It's got lots of antioxidants, vitamin C. I feel like I want to start eating it more just as fruit maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'll explore it in a can because it seems to be an awfully interesting item.
That's how I've only had jackfruit as fruit, and I really, really loved it. I haven't tried it as a meat substitute. I'd also like to throw in there as a meat substitute something which we've talked a lot about on the show is mushrooms, right? Because that's what came up a lot in my research. So we won't go into that too much because I think we've talked about it so much on the podcast. But it's a really great way to provide a lot of that earthy flavor that meats provide.
Sure.
And super
lentils.
And lentils.
Lentils
and
and pulses
yeah.
and legumes and those kinds of things. Exactly. So I think, right, I agree. We're on to the weirder stuff in this episode than that. So we are about to play you a clip of our resident nutritional expert, Vicki Shanta-Retelney, talking about soy. And I had asked her, I'd had some concerns about tofu and soy because I'd heard things about estrogen in the body and potentially affecting thyroid and breast cancer and health issues like that. So Vicki's going to answer that question and then tell us a little bit more about soy.
So, Vicki, here's my big question about soy. Is it healthy? To what degree is it healthy? And when does it become unhealthy? Because I feel like there's so many things out there about how much you should be having and at what point it just becomes like another thing that is a processed food.
Particularly with regard to estrogen.
Yes, very good questions, because I hear this often. Soy comes from the soybean, and soybeans inherently, like every other bean, contain fiber. They have plant-based nutrients. They have fiber, plant-based nutrients, and they have many compounds in them that aren't very beneficial for the body. But soy does have a phytoestrogen, which is a plant-based estrogen, which is actually very minimal, though. It's not very high in the plant. When we do consume it, it does mimic estrogen in the body, but it doesn't mean that males are going to gain female body parts or anything like that. It's not so much so that it's going to cause an issue with, gender differences consuming soy. Now, some oncologists, because some women and men do have estrogen receptor positive cancers, primarily, women with breast cancer and, ovarian cancer, there is a risk factor that may be associated with that. So some oncologists will err on the side of caution and say do not have soy. Soy is an allergen as well. So it is a food that is allergenic to some people. So if you are one of those people, yes, by all means, do not eat soy. But if you don't have an allergy and you aren't at high risk for an estrogen receptor positive type of cancer, soy holds a nutritional benefit, from cardiovascular health to, cell health to intestinal health. Soybeans are a prebiotic that do feed good bacteria in the gut as well. And they also have, many of the properties that a lot of beans have. So, fiber. The thing I tell people about soy is it can be highly processed. It's in a lot of processed foods, in nutrition bars, in smoothies, in, foods that are highly processed. So that soy protein isolate that you see kind of in nutrition bars and packaged foods is a very processed form of soy. So I do tell people to really watch out for that. I wouldn't be over consuming these isolates, but what I would say to people is having the whole soy food, some tofu, some soy milk, the soybeans like edamame is not a bad thing to be doing for your body. I mean, obviously, potentially eating it daily is not something I recommend. I tell people to have it, add it in as part of a balanced diet versus thinking about it as, a superfood that you're going to consume every day. But if soy milk is the milk that you prefer and you're dairy free and you like soy milk, adding some to your coffee, having it in your oatmeal is perfectly fine to do.
Because wasn't tofu actually a condiment originally when it came to America, that it was something that was always used as a compliment? It was never used or meant to be used as a main dish. Is that correct?
Right. It was used always in Asian cooking as, kind of a protein source. But you're right. When they first started using it, it was sort of a side dish or something that was not part of the main meal. Now it's obviously everywhere. It's ubiquitous in a lot of cuisines, primarily Asian. But you see it in a lot of grocery stores now. And obviously, tofu is something I like to use as a protein source. It's something I would recommend, vegetarians and vegans use as a complete protein that also contains calcium. So I do tell people, when you look at the package of tofu, if it's made with calcium sulfate, it has calcium in it. So for many people that don't eat meat, it's something to think about if they want to get complete protein in their diet. It's not, it does have, it is processed. And obviously tofu, like most foods, I mean, even soy milk, or, you buy edamame at the store and there's some sort of process it's gone through that, all these foods do go through processing, which, most of our food supply does. So it's unfortunate to say, but none of our food is really not processed, so it's something to think about. But you do want to err on the side of caution, like I said, if you are allergic or you're somebody that is watching those plant-based estrogens, specifically with cancers or risk for that, it's something to think about.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you so much, Vicki.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicki. Vicki, as you know, is a longtime friend of the podcast. She's a nationally recognized lifestyle nutrition expert, culinary, and media consultant. You can find out more about her work. She's got a really beautiful blog and a newsletter that goes out, and she's also a nutritionist, so you can certainly hit her up for some advice and help. Actually, she can be reached at victoriashanta-retelney.com.
So I want to talk about Veggie Burgers for a minute, because I know, Rick Fiore, that you are on a constant search for a veggie patty that holds together and is tasty. That this is easier said than done. And I know you've had some success over the years. But I just happened to see something, and I wanted to know if you've ever heard of this. It looked like an amazing trick. So you know my love for America's Test Kitchen.
Yes.
So they just made this veggie burger, which had like binder after binder in it. And
solvents.
Yes, solvents. So it was beets, which was a big part of it, which is not one of the binders, bulgur, walnuts, beans, panko. So we have all of these binders and also delicious seasonings and stuff in there. It looked really, really tasty, actually, I have to say. But
so far.
Here was the trick ingredient I'm wondering if you've ever used. It was a jar of carrot baby food.
No!
Right? So apparently the carrot baby food it's just carrots, so it's tasty, but she said it's a little tacky, so it helps to bind. It's like a little sticky. And so it serves as a binder.
I'm thinking. The first question is, doesn't that seem like a very strong flavor profile to add?
Carrot? I don't think so. The amount it made 8 patties. 8 good-sized patties, the recipe, and it was
well, and I guess now that you're saying
if it
has all those other binders in it, you wouldn't need as much as I might think you would. I was originally thinking you would. All right, interesting.
Baby food jars are little. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and it looked delicious, and then she fried them up and made this delicious, like, aioli sauce type
Fascinating.
Sauce. Fabulous. Yeah.
I'll have to try that. The only other weird binder I've ever tried is a flax seed egg, which is basically, flax seed mixed with water. And it creates a bit of a paste, and then you use that to bind your veggie burger. But that's certainly not, that's sort of the oddest thing.
I wonder if that would work with chia. You know how chia makes like a gelatin.
Yeah, it does. I wonder. Yeah. Huh. I may have to try it, because this is the really big thing with veggie burgers, Kate. If you're going to really want a veggie burger, they're so easy to make, right? So buying them from the store just seems not only a waste of money, but I have gone off of them in the store because I can't find one that even comes close to the flavor profiles I can create at home.
Exactly. And once again, you're not looking for something that's mimicking the taste of a hamburger, which is what the Beyond and Impossible ones are trying to do. Hence what we're saying about they're more marketed to me than you. They're more marketed to meat eaters than non, I think. But the amount of patties that looked so tempting in the freezer section, they looked like they'd be delicious with quinoa and seasonings and this and that. And there's so many that look good. But
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And it's that whole idea when you go into a restaurant that has a homemade veggie burger, there's nothing better than that. I hate going to a restaurant and they're being very coy about their veggie burger. And then when it shows up, it's clearly just like a Boca burger or a Morningstar burger.
That is the worst, because those are the worst ones, too.
Yeah. Morningstar is owned by Kellogg's, which I did not know. Boca is owned by Kraft, which I did not know.
I did not. I'm surprised that those are not owned by each other. They seem like they would be the same giant sort of conglomerate that controls our grocery stores.
And then the only other thing I don't even really like hot dogs anymore, but sometimes I do get into the nuggets, the chicken nuggets, and Morningstar has some nuggets that I like. But then I found these new nuggets by this other brand. I think it's going to be said Curon, Quorn.
Corn. Yeah, I was going to ask about those. I think it's pronounced corn.
Oh. I tried them, and I have to say the first couple bites were very satiating. They actually tasted like chicken, but what was so odd, the taste fell away so quickly, more so than any other brand I've ever tried as far as the nugget thing goes.
Oh, interesting.
2 or 3 were great, but then I couldn't taste anything. I was just chewing stuff afterwards. On something unlike the Morningstar, where like whatever flavor is there, which isn't particularly chicken, it at least lasts throughout each nugget. Wow, that was a lot of information on nuggets that I did not expect to convey.
Do you have a recommendation for a brand of sausage, like fake sausage, that has a similar texture?
I really don't. I feel like I've gone through so many. I can't say I found one that's really great. The closest thing I've come is for breakfast. I do like the Morningstar sausage patties. I think they're still flavor profile, one of the better ones out there. But just
I forgot about those.
Yeah, the round sausage patties. I think the flavor profile is even different from the, what would you call them, links that they offer.
Yes, that's right. I didn't ever liked the links. I also didn't like the texture of the links, but the patties I remember liking okay. And you and I both really like the soy riso from Trader Joe's. The soy-based chorizo, because it's all about that seasoning.
Yeah, that solves a lot.
What's your stand on bacon substitutes, fake bacon?
I'm so frustrated because I want a good bacon substitute, and I have not found one. The only one I can find is in this little restaurant called Mark's Kitchen in Tacoma Park, and I really haven't been back there in quite a while, but I swear to God, the next time I'm going back, I'm going to try and ask them what is the brand that they use, because it is so flavorful. The texture's perfect.
Wow.
I know, right?
Yeah. I remember finding that it's the thing we were saying before. If they don't try to pass it off as bacon, there are some products that have a nice smoky flavor and some crispiness that can add something to eggs, for example, or a sandwich that bacon might add. But don't try to pretend it's anything resembling bacon.
Anything. We won't have it. Even I, who have not had bacon in how long now?
Yeah. Decades
would not permit that.
Yeah. Whereas I do think some of these fake burgers really are pretty close to replicating a burger. And I'm guessing some of the chicken nuggets might be close to that too.
I would agree, yeah.
But I feel like the bacon has a long way to go. And I've yet to find a sausage. But I also haven't tried every sausage on the market. So we want to hear from you guys. If you know of any great fake meats or meat substitutes out there, fresh or frozen, please let us know. We'll share with people on an upcoming episode, because I bet you there's other people that would like to know. So if you have favorites, please reach out.
The other thing I want to say is, when we talk about how to stay healthy in a tastier world, one of the things I do love about Beyond Meat and the way they have that slogan that they're not marketing to vegetarians is they're actually trying to get people to eat less meat. And I love that idea. So as far as eating healthy, right, and staying healthy, it's just important to think about maybe some meat substitutes, one you like, that you can incorporate into your week. 1 or 2 meals, right? Are there any other opportunities where you can maybe have a little less meat in your diet? That's the only thing I think to think about when it comes to sort of these meat substitutes, if you're a heavy meat eater, is how do you just find 1 or 2 that you can incorporate and that you like?
Totally. And then at another time, we're going to do an episode where we talk about creative ways to do vegetable and plant-based meals that are not intended to be meat substitutes, that are just about interesting vegetarian cooking. But meanwhile, and if you're going through a fast food place and they have the fake one, try it. See what you think. And maybe it's just one less piece of meat that you eat that week.
Because we know that when you choose a meat substitute, there's a couple things that are happening. You're having less impact on water, right? They take less water to be made. They take less land use. They take less energy and less greenhouse emissions. All of which do what? Save the planet.
Yeah, so it goes beyond the question of eating animals or not eating animals. It goes beyond into an environmental consideration that I think is important. Agreed.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, thank you all so much for listening.
And have a wonderful, wonderful week.